Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather.
And I'm Levi.
And it's been a really long time since we did one of these Q&As. It's actually been since, I think, September. It was a really busy fall. We skipped winter. We had 2 days of winter. Quick thrust into spring. It's been really crazy, but I'm glad we're back. We have a little bit of a backlog of questions. I have 14 here. Normally I like to keep it to 10, but I want to get everybody's questions answered if I can. So I wanted to remind everybody before we get started that we just opened our first little bit of merch. We launched a couple different designs on spring, and I'm going to link the storefront in the description box if you'd like to check that out. Thank you to everybody who has purchased some of our t-shirts so far. I've been shocked by the response. I expected maybe a couple family members to purchase the shirts, but it's been more than that, and it's been really awesome to see.
Cost-wise, was it more or less expensive to purchase a homestead versus a home? Was the process similar to buying a home?
So this is our first house that we've ever purchased. And as far as I know, it wasn't any different than buying a regular house. Like I don't know if there is homestead versus home. I know that you can buy agricultural land and that's different. And while we are in agricultural zoning, this was exactly like buying a house. This particular piece of property came with the barn. It came with the chicken coop. It came with a couple different sheds that had electricity hooked up, and it came with the raised bed garden. A little less raised beds than it has now, but it had a lot already set up here, and it had fencing. So it was a farm that we bought, but it wasn't listed like that. It was listed as just the trailer. The insurance only looks at this trailer. They don't care about any of the outbuildings, and none of the outbuildings were included in our, the appraisal. So that can look a little bit different. Like our friends over at GWP Homestead, they have a really nice shop that is on a slab, and it's lighted and has electricity and everything. They said that their shop was included on the mortgage and on the insurance, so it might just kind of depend.
Yeah, I would imagine at a point it becomes a farm purchase, but this was
when it's an actual business that you're buying.
Yeah, I don't even know. It might be land size because we don't qualify for the tax status for a farm.
No, we don't.
By 0.79 acres.
Yeah, we have 9.21 acres here, and in order to get the farm tax exemption at our local farm store, we need 10 acres. We'll buy a little bit extra one of these days. We will.
Now, thinking back to when we bought our property, at that time, did we envision doing all the things that we're doing now?
You go first. What did you think of when he was deployed? He was over in Europe when we purchased this property. It was essentially purchased sight unseen, but there was a lot of pictures and the people who lived here sent me a whole bunch of pictures and videos. So there was a lot of dreaming that was done pretty quickly for me.
I've always enjoyed being outdoors, and hunting was always something that I wanted to do, not something that I had ever done prior to getting here. From the pictures I had seen, I saw the pond and some trees around it. I couldn't get a full grasp of concept what was here and what wasn't here. So I did hope for some hunting and just being outside, spending time outdoors. I don't know that I really specifically imagined having all the animals we have, the bees, the huge greenhouse, and everything we've done here. We have definitely been blessed far beyond what I ever would have imagined or dreamed.
Yeah, so initially the only thing I could think about was a dairy cow. It was ridiculous. I probably still have the book, like Your First Dairy Cow. I can't remember what it's called. And I knew that it was fenced in. All it had was it was falling down electric fence. But the previous property owner told me, that's all you need to contain a dairy cow. So I really had my heart set on a dairy cow, and obviously things went really different than that. But I can remember he was deployed. I spent the first summer here by myself with all 4 kids, and I can remember walking around on the property dreaming about what was going to be what. So the chicken run was really small when we got here. It was a really small, just little strip. And I remember kind of walking around and trying to picture in my head expanding that, and expanding, like putting in an actual real fence and stuff. And I could see it. I didn't know that it was going to happen this quickly. I don't know that I didn't dream as far as we went. And I think that's what Levi was trying to get at initially. My dreams were this big, and we ended up getting this much in a really short amount of time. So yeah, we are very blessed beyond what we could have imagined. We get this question a lot.
What does goat meat taste like?
So much sweeter than I pictured. And so I was picturing venison. I was picturing that it would taste kind of like lamb, and like it kind of is a marriage of the two, but there is a definite sweetness to it, and it's delicious. I really, really enjoy it. It's got, the fat on it is almost buttery in texture. It almost doesn't, I mean, butter is a fat, but it's different than like comparing it to tallow or bacon fat or something like that. The texture of it is very silky, and it's super good.
Uncultured palate, and I think it tastes like meat.
You have an uncultured palate.
Yeah.
You eat goat and rabbit, and you have an uncultured palate. There's a lot of people out there that don't know what anything tastes like, aside from the grocery store meat, which is very non-flavored. It's crazy. That first summer that I was here with the 4 kids, I grew our first batch of meat chickens on grass. I grew them in Joel Salatin? No. A John Siskovich, that's it. A John Siskovich style chicken tractor out on grass. And I'm not gonna lie, the first time I tasted our pastured meat, I kind of freaked out because I didn't really like it. It actually had flavor. Chicken at that point was nearly gamey to me. It was bizarre, and it took eating it quite a few times for my palate to adjust to eating food that had flavor. I was not used to it, but now we can't have it any other way.
What is the best way to store seeds so that they last and are viable?
So it kind of depends. I store my seeds, I have a binder that sits in the closet, and I don't do anything like refrigeration or freezing. Some people do. Cool, dry, that's really the 2 main rules. There are some seeds that germinate better if they have gone through, I can't remember what it's called, but some seeds need to freeze, like poppies need to actually freeze in order to get cold stratification, I think it's called, in order to germinate well. And so that is something to think about. It depends on the type of seed. Some seeds need scarification in order to germinate, which you can take sandpaper and kind of scar up the outside of the seed. There are the blue butterfly pea is like that, as well as loofah, and I'm sure there are many others. But basically that replicates the seed going through the digestive system of an animal and then coming back out the other end. The animal's digestive system will have broken down the outside of the seed so that it's able to germinate. And if you don't have that as part of the process, taking some sandpaper to the outside of the seed is how you can replicate that. So there's a little bit more than just storage that contributes to viability, but cool, dry place in general is all you really need.
You grow your own food. Does that make cooking more enjoyable?
It makes it, when it goes wrong, much more sad. So we grew yodfa broccoli last spring, and I spent a long time preserving it and putting it away. I do not like how it tastes. It's so bitter. I'd choke that stuff down. That's not exactly the cooking part of it, but I know while I'm cooking it that I'm not gonna like it. But because I grew it, I eat it. I don't make anybody else eat it, but...
There is something about opening a carton of eggs, seeing every shade of brown and green and blue and pink and white and whatever, and it's not just a cheap carton of eggs you bought from the store or an expensive carton of eggs you bought from the store. There's definitely a gratification to it, and eggs is what I cook more often than anything when I'm cooking here. But
you cook your venison too. I know I know I've seen the pride on Levi's face when he cooks a venison backstrap and gets to eat it and then, you know, serves the leftovers again the next morning. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. And I definitely take more care with what I care a lot more what I'm cooking. I don't necessarily just want to add salt, pepper, and bake it. You know, you can do that, no problem. But I usually try to make it a little bit more elevated than that. But it kind of helps that what we're cooking, you know, quail, deer, rabbit, those aren't really run-of-the-mill common ingredients anyway. Goat, stuff like that. So the recipes that we do have usually are a little bit more involved. And yeah, it is really fun to cook. There's a lot you can do with all of those exotics.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exotic when you're only used to beef, pork, chicken from the grocery store.
Which is ridiculous because they're native, but I digress.
You're right.
Do you still get stung beekeeping with a suit on? I'm allergic to bees, but want to keep them.
Yeah, you get stung. Not necessarily through the suit. Like, it's not necessarily while keeping you get stung, but when you have many more bees around, people get stung. Every day. Every day in the spring, somebody gets stung because my kids like to run around outside without their shoes. We have a plethora of clover all over the ground, and of course the bees are all over that. And even just walking with my flip-flops on from the house to one of our outdoor sheds, if you kick a bee on accident, you're gonna get stung. So if you're allergic, I don't think I would suggest keeping them, because even just having that many bees near, it's not that, you know, they come for you and sting you, but you're just around them more often. You're a lot more likely to bump into them or step on them. And it does happen a lot here. We get stung a lot.
What herbs can I grow on my balcony? Not a lot of sun, sadly.
I actually had to Google this. I don't know, because we have a too much sun problem here. So I Googled a little bit and learned that you can grow chives, lemon balm, tarragon, mint, and parsley. So lemon balm is part of the mint family. So I kind of wonder if you could grow things like oregano or rosemary or something like that, members of the mint family, on your windowsill. It would depend on how much sun you got, because a lot of the herbs that I saw listed, as long as you got 6 hours of sun, that was all that they needed. And I honestly don't think that that necessarily means full blasting direct sun. Like a bright indirect sun is definitely worth trying a variety of different herbs.
And grow light could help too, supplement some.
Yes. You could do a grow light. It doesn't even have to be a specific grow light. The grow lights that I have for starting my seedlings are actually LED shop lights. So I did do a little bit of research and try to get LED shop lights that had 3,000 lumens. That's going to be important. Go away, kitty.
I think wasn't it the color range?
Yeah, it had to be broad spectrum. It has to have all the different colors in it. Broad spectrum, 3,000 lumens. So you could do a lot indoors with a grow light.
Do you have plans to upgrade from goats to a dairy cow?
I think a lot of people do this. They start with goats and they move on to a cow. Like, goat is your prerequisite to owning a cow. I do not want a cow. I do not want a cow for anything, including dairy. I thought I wanted a cow, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Our neighbors keep Black Angus cattle. When we moved here, I stood next to a cow and saw how big cows are and decided I did not want to deal with an animal that big. Guys, I barely like dealing with my pigs. My pigs are 200 and something pounds, and I don't love that. I really like knowing that I can handle the animal that I'm dealing with by myself. So I had this mindset when Levi was in the military. He's not anymore. But when you live a lot of, you know, your year alone and there's a lot to do by yourself, you have to think about stuff like that. Here's why I wouldn't want a cow. Just size not included. I guess it kind of, the size is part of it, but our land is really muddy and really mucky, and cows are really heavy, and I think that it just wouldn't be the best kind of pasture situation. If we had higher ground where our pastures are, I think maybe we could handle a heavy animal on it. But also there's the logistics of, okay, you have a dairy cow, how are you going to breed her? So right now our neighbors keep Angus, and he wouldn't care if we put a cow next door with his bull and let him breed her. That would have to be an okay match, because it's not always smart to breed certain bulls with certain cows, just for calving ease and things like that. But we don't have a vet that comes out to service our area at all for sick animals. So we couldn't get a vet to come out here to do AI. So there's logistical things that it just wouldn't make sense for us to do it. So I really, really enjoy our goats. The goats give us A2 milk. All goats, as far as I know, all goats produce the A2 milk that's easier to digest. An A2 dairy cow is a little bit hard to come by, and when you can find them, they're very, very expensive. So we really enjoy the goats. I like their size. I am able to do things like hoof trimming and other medical procedures, like helping them out with them having their babies. If they need kidding assistance, I can do that by myself. I don't need to call the vet. There's just a lot that I would need outside help for with cattle that I don't have the support here in that area, and I would not want to try to handle by myself. So no, I'm never going to get a cow. Now, never say never, but I'm never going to get a cow.
How are the pigs doing? Any piglets due soon? And when will you have your own pork in the freezer?
So we have a little bit, it's not our own pork. Got it sitting right here, let me grab it. So this is not our own pork, but we have been able to procure some pork. Some of our friends.
He's part of a hunting club.
Yeah, he's part of a hunting club down in Georgia, and they were able to bring back a wild hog for us, and we were able to put a lot of the meat up in cans. I still have some of the meat in the freezer that I need to cut up into pork chops and pork ribs and stuff. So we have some pork in the freezer and in cans, which is really awesome and feels really good. I just moved our boar, Bobo, back in with the girls right before the freeze in December, and I have not seen them breed. I haven't really seen the girls come into a heat. As far as I know, the coonies will come into heats year round about every 24 to 28 days, but they may have heavier heats in the spring. So I'm kind of waiting for that to see what happens. But if we don't have piglets or signs of piglets by fall time, my plan is to sell off Bobo the boar and put the girls in the freezer. So I don't want to go through really more hassle than to get a new boar, to separate Bo again so that hopefully he's interested in the girls again. The problem with pigs sometimes is if you raise them up together from piglets, they sometimes will just get this roommate mentality and they won't breed. And I think that's our problem. If he hasn't bred them, I think that's the problem. We've already separated him before for 6 months, and bringing them back together, I'm not sure that it worked. So we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. We're going to give them the time, but then they will all be gone. And what we'll do for pork in the future is either Levi will go down to Georgia and hunt some wild hogs, or the option might be available here as well. But we are also surrounded by a really large Amish community around here, and there's always feeder pigs available for really inexpensive. And so more than likely we would just raise 1 or 2 big pigs every couple years from feeder pigs, because I don't necessarily feel like I need to breed them in order to get them here, especially like I said with the community that we have around here. Really, I want to put my effort and energy into breeding our high quality dairy goats. That's really where my heart is, and the pigs are really just a food thing, and I would like for it to not be complicated.
Why don't you use dehorning paste instead of the disbudding iron to remove horn buds on the goats? So the dehorning paste, as far as I know, is a lye solution. I looked into it before we did any of the disbuddings here, and lye it's caustic, right? That's what you call it when it Yeah, I believe that's the term.
It burns the skin and it burns the horn tissue off. And I know that when you handle lye just on a regular basis, or if you like a drain cleaner or whatnot, it will burn through your skin and it will cause blindness if it gets in your eyes. I didn't want to risk that with my goats, mostly because I don't know how well it really works, but also we dam raise our kids here. So if I was to put dehorning paste on the top of the kid's head and then he would to go crawl under his mama to drink, he'd be getting this burning lye solution kind of everywhere, including on his mother's udder and on his mother's snout. And it's not something that I think I really want to deal with. The disbudding with the iron is actually a lot easier than it looks. There's this hump to get over with, obviously you think you're going to hurt the baby goat, but once you experience it yourself and you see how easy it really is, how thorough it can be, and how quickly they bounce back, honestly, I prefer it. I feel like the lye solution would just be a longer, more painful thing, possibly less effective, and just it could cause more problems. So that's why I don't do the dehorning paste.
I have silver fox rabbits that are 14 to 16 weeks old and need processing. I've heard that pelts on young rabbits are not good to keep. Is that true? When does rabbit meat start getting tough?
So we also read that the younger the rabbit is, the harder it is going to be to keep the pelt, to tan the hide. Not impossible, but a younger rabbit pelt may tear more easily. So we haven't raised any rabbits past probably 16 weeks old intentionally. So we have processed some adults, but the pelts that we kept a couple of years ago were from 16-week-old rabbits. And honestly, they didn't do too bad. I tried to egg tan them, but the hair started falling out. It wasn't that the hide was tearing at all. And I think if we had done an alum solution to tan the hides, it would have done much better, because apparently the alum soak helps seal the ends to the hairs and helps prevent them from coming out. So I don't know, I think it's worth keeping, especially at 14 to 16 weeks. I don't think you have to wait 6 whole months in order to get a quality hide, as long as you're careful. And when does rabbit meat start getting tough? I don't know. So we processed an older doe for Autumn. She was over 4. She's been in the freezer. I don't know if we've eaten her or not. I didn't mark her.
We've processed some breeders plenty that we've eaten that
weren't tough. But rabbit meat is one of those things, it's already cooked low and slow and moist. So it's already getting those like treatments that you would give to an old hen or whatever. So the meat is already cooked in that way that we've never noticed an older rabbit, a breeder rabbit, be tough at all.
Do Nigerian Dwarves tend to go into heat at the same time? Is there a way to guess how far along a pregnant goat is?
So there are people who will say that they have a herd mentality. So once one goes into heat, they'll all go into heat, or once one starts giving birth, they'll all start giving birth. I don't find that to be true. We have does go into heat really variable around here, and we have quite a few of them all together, but I don't think I've ever had 16 does in heat at the same time before. That would be insane. So they only will have, it's about 18 to 28. I know that's kind of variable, but that's what I've seen. 18 to 28 dates in between heats. And so if this person bought 3 goats, she bought them bred, 2 of them, they know the date. 1 of them, they don't know the date. I would guess that she's only within 3 weeks of the other ones, because if they were running with the buck at the same time and he didn't have a whole bunch of does to service, I'm sure he got to her at pretty close to the other does. So besides ultrasounding, I don't know if there's a real surefire way to say when she's due. I know that my girls will start uddering up about 4 to 6 weeks before they kid. They'll start filling up their udder. So one of them waited a while, was Idolin. She was her second freshen. She didn't udder up until just a few weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks before she was due to have her baby. But you can usually start to feel the babies moving around 3 months gestation. They have a 5-month gestation period, and you can kind of guess based on if you can feel them or if you can't feel them, or when you start to be able to feel them and when they start uddering up. But watch her closely within 3 weeks of the other girls' due dates.
How can I get started homesteading while on disability? To answer that question, I think more questions have to be asked. There's a lot of variables. For homesteading, are you looking into doing chickens in a garden or rabbits in a garden, or are you wanting a dairy cow or a meat cow?
What are the disabilities?
There are many variables on what homesteading means, and then what is the disability? What are the disabilities? What are your limits? What are you capable of? How much time are you able to invest? Then lastly, what are your income limitations? So I think a lot of it is going to just depend on taking an inventory of your capabilities, what you're willing to do, and what you're financially capable of doing, and then start a goals list of what you would like to see start happening within the first 6 months, year, 5 years, and just kind of write it out and then budget according to that goals list. Start small. I think Heather's done a couple videos on small ways to garden, whether it be the sprout jars or even window boxes. I personally think rabbits are probably the easiest entry animal as far as maintenance, care, and just the space and time that they require.
Rabbits or quail.
The thing with the rabbits is a lot of people think they're cute and fluffy and emotionally have a hard time processing them, dispatching them. But as far as the space and the time requirements, I think rabbits are about as easy as it gets.
Yeah, I think if someone had to start small, like let's say the space is small, the budget is small, the capabilities are small, quail is probably the place to start, because you can raise them indoors, even elevated. They could be in elevated cages. They start laying in 6 to 8 weeks and are really easy to butcher with very minimal tools. Quail is where I would start if meat is what you're talking about. Otherwise, a sprouting jar, or simply, I know Jess says it all the time on Roots and Refuge Farm, turn your waiting room into a classroom so you can learn skills while you're waiting to obtain the things. So before you have a garden, learn how to prepare and process food. Learn how to cook food with ingredients instead of with prepackaged stuff. That's excellent. It's a really great place to start if you are in the dreaming phase of things. And lastly, someone had requested some vegetable canning tips, and I could only think of one on the fly. So many of you who have been following the channel for a little bit know that our entire greenhouse worth of fall and winter vegetables got either eaten by mice or froze in that Arctic blast. We got basically nothing out of our fall and winter garden. I did get a few little heads of lettuce, but really we got to benefit from one of our Amish friends. His brother grew way too much cabbage. And so we bought some of that cabbage and I put it up in cans. This coleslaw is so good. I will put the recipe in the description box below, but the thing that really surprised me is it's still crunchy. We drain out the liquid inside and put a little bit of any kind of dressing on it. And I do like to add some fresh sprouts to it. And it is so crunchy. And it's because we added this Mrs. Wage's Extra Crunch. And sorry if this is a tip that you already knew existed. I already knew about it, but I didn't realize how crunchy something could still be after the canning process. These were steam canned. And so this is a really awesome game changer to keep at least the steam canned high acid vegetables nice and crisp. So you guys, if you've been here a little while, you know I like to give something away at the end of our Q&As. And actually, the 4 Jars Canning Lid Company, I reached out to them and asked them, hey, I'd love to try out some of your products. I'd love to feature them on my channel. Could you maybe send me a sample? And they sent me 300 lids. It's a lot. It is so much what they said. I'm so grateful. It helps me know that they really must believe in their product because they sent so much out. But I would like to bless one of you with either the wide mouth or the regular mouth 100 count lid. So in order to enter to win this or the narrow mouth or regular mouth sleeve, let me know in the comments what your favorite season is. And in 1 week, I will go through the comments, randomly draw, and I will post the winner in a separate video. How do we close it out?
God bless us, everyone.
So let us know in the comment section if you have any more questions. I try really hard to answer every single comment that comes my way, but I do know that I have been missing some lately. So if you've asked me something before and I didn't get back to you, either email me or ask me again down in the comments and I will do my best to answer.
Good night.
Good night.